Came out the bottom, I count a whole lot of young gonna worth millions of dollars. I asked out the charm, my little bitch a model. She made a few ends off her followers. Your one on tour, a BP the child. Living a cool title. Handle my worries, I'm up at it early. Young niggas tryna figure out the problem. But 30-30, I hit it like Curry. They hit me, I don't even holler. These niggas songs floppy. Niggas ain't gon' stop me. Switch out my cars and my addy, my family straight, and that's all that matter. Stacking them rest and then saving, put back for whatever, whenever it happens. I put my trust in my paper and I'm walking through straight, I don't see no one else. No, it ain't low in this rap. Simmons is better missteps. Stay ready, I'm already prepped. Undefeated, I feel like the champ.
What's up, guys? We're back for our final episode here at Sports Journeys podcast. I'm kind of sad that this is the last one. But I'm excited also because I know there's more to come. It's been a journey, and that's why we're here. We're talking about my journey. If you made it this far, you went through from the time I started, and this episode will talk about where it ended. Now, I did, for those who don't know, I did play professionally for 6 years, and it was a journey in itself, just that part of and season of my life. But I will say I'm going to try to we're not going to focus more on like the playing part, but again, staying in line with more of the adversity, more of the inside scoop, and some of the things that happen along the way that I had to overcome, and the challenges that were a part of that story. So we are going to get right to it. I want to try to keep this as short as I can, but this will be another long podcast. But if you've been enjoying this, hopefully that's okay. I've been enjoying just sharing my story. Again, you know, I've shared this story so many times, man. Shared this story with high schools, middle schools, you know, different teams, high school teams. And the kids, the adults, man, really enjoy this story, and just seeing the impact of this story is really why I started the podcast, was to share that story to a broader audience, to let people know more about me, and just kind of walk you through my story, man, and prayerfully, you know, this will be a blessing to you guys. If you've been tuning in, obviously it has to some degree. And I hope that this far you're learning some things, you're getting some new perspective. Hopefully it's leading you closer in your walk with God if you're a person, a follower of Jesus. And, you know, if not, like I always say, this is for everyone. This podcast is for everyone. I think there's a lot to learn, and just a lot of interesting things about my story. Maybe you're just intrigued by some of the things that happen. And so either way, for whatever reason you're here and you are watching this video now, and you stop to watch it, and to listen, I really appreciate you, and I legitimately thank you from the bottom of my heart. Everyone who has contributed to this podcast in whatever way. You know, for those of you who've been subscribing, and, you know, you've been following, learning more about what I do, business wise, and just continuing to share these things, like it, you know, the comments, all of it, man. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the support and the positivity. There's more to come. You know, we won't. This train doesn't stop. We'll keep it rolling. So yeah, let's get into it, man. I wanted to start by talking about my professional football journey and what a journey it was. I was what one would call, if you heard it in the NFL, you heard maybe an announcer say this of a guy who was a journeyman, right? Now, a journeyman, like myself, was somebody who just played everywhere. For some guys who made their professional living in the NFL, maybe you played for half the teams in the NFL, you know, maybe even more. Some players have played with more than that. And that's just the way it happens sometimes for some guys. And again, I was one of those guys that kind of bounced around everywhere. If it ended in a league, I probably had some kind of stop in it. And so there's so many stops that I had. I don't think we can cover all of it. And as I said, I want to try to keep it as minimum as I possibly can. But we'll kind of briefly walk through those stops. But I want to share some more important things within those stops that I really like to talk about. So if you tuned in last episode, you know that I left Malone. I had got to a point where I wanted to give up for the first time on my dream. And as a kid, I really just had dreams of just playing professional football. I really didn't. And I know it sounds crazy to some people because the common thing is like, I want to play in the NFL. And of course, you know, I had the same aspiration, but I just wanted to be a professional football player. I wanted to win championships, and I just wanted to be a professional football player. And so I remember going back to high school, in my yearbook, I put in there for our seniors did a small portion in the yearbook, and one of them was like, you know, what you want to be when you grow up. You know, what do you want to accomplish after high school? And so they had us put our baby pictures in there. I didn't have any young baby pictures, so of course, knowing me, I put my football picture in there from when I first started playing football. If you know me, you know that's coming, right? But we mentioned in there what we wanted to do. For me, it was simple. I wanted to be the first in my family to graduate college, which I did. Again, graduated, got a 4-year degree from a great university, and graduated with honors. My first in the family to ever do that. And I wanted to play professional football. And those were my two big things. I don't necessarily recall as a kid caring where it was. I just wanted to do it. And so I had dreams then of just being a champion. You know, my team holding up the trophy and winning. And whether it was a Super Bowl or whatever championship I literally loved winning and I hated losing. And, for me, my team being the last team in the bracket, holding up the trophy was enough for me. And everybody's different. Everybody has different goals, even professionally, and I think more of us need to be okay with that. I think goals can be, like I said, everybody's goal is different, but I think we tend to streamline goals into, okay, if it's not this goal, then it's not a success. But that's not that's not real life, right? Everybody might not want to look like a bodybuilder. All right, if you think of it from a physical standpoint, somebody's success might be, I just want to lose 30 pounds, or I just want to lose, or I just want to tone up. I want to be as toned as I possibly can, right? For that individual, that goal being met is everything, right? And so I think we need to be more open to what success looks like, and it doesn't always look like what the prototypical thing, right? I wanted to point that out there, throw that out there. And so, yeah, just to give you backstory on that, as a kid, I just wanted to be a professional athlete. And by the grace of God, I was able to do that for 6 years. So starting off with leaving Malone, I had ended up not having a pro day, for one. So not only did things happen with the coaching staff, those interest letters, from NFL scouts inquiring about me were shredded, lost, right? Whatever you want to call it. That happened. Not only that, we didn't have an NFL pro day at our campus. And so, the next step was trying to find an agent, and really just trying to get an opportunity, and which was hard. Being in my situation, it was really a situation where it would have to be an act of God in order for me to get a chance at any professional league, because of how things just played out. And so I went to the combine, and went to the combine in Cleveland. It's a regional combine, NFL. And so went there. I did fantastic, man. Like I killed it. Trained for it. Again, I told you guys I trained with 2 tents, so I was still doing that. He really tried to set me up with somebody who could train me for the combine. So, I was training with the pro guys, 2 temps, and, really trying to do combine prep and pro day prep. So we did that. I felt like, me personally, I felt like I overtrained, and I never really thought that overtraining was a thing until I experienced it for myself, right? And training wasn't what it was now. It was evolving, but we've come so far. I feel old saying that, but it really has changed so much. Now, I wasn't big on training being like this reinvented wheel. I think there's a lot of beauty and simplicity in training. But, regardless, I felt like I overtrained for the combine and didn't feel my best. And so I still did well. I didn't run my greatest 40. I think, again, I was overtraining. I was really beat. But I did a great job at the combine, catching the football, running routes. My shuttle was one of the top shuttles. But my 40, that was the first time I ever struggled in my 40. And I mentioned this to you guys before, that I tested in the 40 at 4:29 hand time, right? Now, laser time, that would be a little higher, probably in the sub 4:3s. But naturally I was a 4:3, 4:4 guy. Train hard, and obviously running below that. I knew that I could get that. And, you get one shot, what you put on paper is what you put on paper, and that will follow you. And so, obviously didn't run a good 40. I think that set me back a lot. Didn't sign after draft day. And so, well, actually, let me go back. So the combine, you see the picture here. This picture was in an article about small school receiver prospects, and they talked about myself and some other guys on NFL.com, and that's me there with my head down, and that's within itself kind of like a subliminal message, because at that point, mentally, my head was down, if that makes sense. And, having gone through all those things in college, I felt exhausted from that, and then coming in, having to perform at a high level. I learned the importance of being in the right place mentally. Can throw a workout off, can throw a game off, a practice, lifting, whatever. And it's just a part of sports, really. Learning how to prepare and do the things that are necessary to help put you in a better mentality and a better mindset for the things that you are doing. Just really focusing more on the process and what needs to be done, loving the process. That's a whole nother talk. But the combine went pretty good, but it wasn't the greatest. And so I was left, draft day happened, didn't get any calls to sign with free agency. I did have a workout with the Steelers. And so kind of rewind to how that happened. There was a local scout who was not directly affiliated with the Steelers organization, but worked with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the draft room. And this scout had really taken interest in me. He saw my film, obviously, knew that I could play at the NFL level, at a high level. And helped me get a shot. And so a week before this workout, I tore my ACL. And if you thought I wanted to give up before, I definitely wanted to give up this second time. I was training in the Steelers facility and getting some extra work, and literally tore my ACL working with some of the college guys who were playing college ball. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, not again. And it wasn't as severe as my last knee injury, but I injured the other knee, and this was an ACL complete tear, and MCL had a partial tear. So it wasn't as severe, but obviously it's still severe, and it's career ending for some guys. And so I remember sitting in the doctor's office, in the waiting room, and I got crutches, and I'm like just kind of allowing my mind to go in the wrong direction, in a negative direction. And I'm like, man, like this is over. This is over. I'm like, I finally get a chance to potentially play for my hometown and get the shot that I wanted, given the circumstances. And so I'm like, man, I'm finally getting a shot in this. So it was tough, and I sit there and I'm like, I'm about to give up. And I heard something inside me say, look to your right. And I look to my right, and on the wall it says, if you have a dream, never give up. And I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe that was an accident. I know that voice, for me personally, I know that voice. And when I hear it, I know who it is. You know, I know it's the Spirit of God. And I heard the Spirit of God speak, and I'm like, oh. Like it was both encouraging and a sigh because I'm like, oh man, that means I'm going to have to make the decision to once again try to overcome this and try to come back from this. Now, I knew what it took at this point to come back successfully from this, but you never know if the next one you'll survive like you did the last one. So there's that fear on one end, but I have learned all too well to push past fear. And so I made the decision then and there, really. I knew it was God. And, you know, I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep going once again. And so I did recover. So that set me back, right? I remember mentioning to you guys before in an early episode about college, the D1 clock, right? When I was coming out in college, you take that first class that clock starts, and now you got 4 years to compete. So similar instance, you know, like that time is ticking. And one thing that I knew of and that people constantly reminded me about was the clock. All right. The age clock. And so I was already an older senior at the time because of how things played out, taking a semester or two part-time, you know what I mean? That just extends the time, right? And so this injury would extend that time even more. So now I have to focus on recovery for at least a year and trying to get back. And then from there, trying to get back into playing shape. And that is a mental and physical challenge within itself. So I came back from it. I knew what mentality I need to have. I'm like, if I can come back from the last one was career ending, then I could come back from this one with God's help. And so did it, came back from it. The goal again, bigger, faster, stronger, more explosive, more flexible. Those were my goals. And so I did just that. I came back from that, but time had passed, right? And so, you know, I felt like I was back to square one. And I think a lot of people thought that I was done when that happened the second time. So, you know, in the midst of that, man, once a person with so much potential and once a young college athlete with, you know, the sky's the limit, now you go to somebody who's damaged goods, right? And that's the business part of professional sports is, you know, a lot of it is transactional and very business-like. And so and I can go really deep into that, but for time's sake, I'm gonna keep moving along. So let's talk about a former player who and my favorite player. So my favorite player growing up was Curtis Martin. Okay. And so Curtis Martin was my favorite player. He was from Pittsburgh. If you don't know Curtis Martin, he is the Jets' all-time leading rusher. He is a NFL Hall of Famer. And somebody who I admired. If you watched, I think the second episode, I talked about how I started at running back, and running back was my first position. And so Curtis Martin's position is running back. And so then I used to really admire him, especially as a more quiet athlete. I think that stood out to me, the fact that he was dominant and quiet. And you know, that impacted me and the type of man he was as well. Didn't really fit the stereotypical pro athlete that one would be accustomed to. And I felt like I was the same caliber player in my own right. And so I want to share this part of my story with you because it was very pivotal And this story is very impactful, man. And I've shared this story with a handful of people. But now I'm, sharing this with everyone. Back when I was in grade school, I had went to a service with my dad. Now, this wasn't the service that the New Year's service where I met my wife. This was even further back than that. Okay. So we were in a service, and this is back home in Pittsburgh, and around the time I started. So kind of around 4th or 5th grade. And so this particular service, Curtis Martin was there. And after the service, my dad was like, well, he was like, you guys are like the same person, kind of play the same as well. He was like, why don't you just walk up to him and go and meet him? And I see the long line of people like trying to talk to him, and and so I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. I was too nervous anyway. And so I told my dad no. And he's like, man, like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk to him. So he goes to talk to him. I could see them looking at me, pointing like, oh, yeah, him right there. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm a nervous wreck. And, Curtis starts coming towards me. And he introduced himself. Hey, I'm Curtis Martin. I'm like, yeah, I'm Kevin. And I was so nervous. And he's like, hey, well, your dad said you might want an autograph. Maybe I can, we can find a piece of paper. I can, give you one. And so I'm like, okay, I didn't know what to say. And he finds like an old bulletin on there on the table. He usually had a table with a bunch of stuff on it. He flips it over, blank side, signs it, gives it to me. And I was just like such in shock that it even happened. And though I was like a nervous wreck, I really appreciated the moment. And so I found out afterwards that more about Curtis, that he was being a blessing to the church. And I know he probably wouldn't want me speaking on this, the details, but yeah, he was helping people in the church, and I heard about it. And so he ultimately became my favorite player. Being the kind of man he was, being a man of God, being that star player that he was, and really being humble. I think his humility really stood out the most to me as a kid, as a young, impressionable kid. And so he quickly became somebody I watched, and somebody I admired. And again, he just became my favorite player. And so I kept this autograph. I just happened to have one NFL hat at my house, and it was a Jets hat, random Jets hat, right? And so I put it on my wall in my room, and just kept it up there, man. And so fast forward, we're talking about the combine. Go to the combine, right? Had the injury, came back from the injury. And at this point, I was really praying, like, Lord, if this is your will for me to play professional football, I have these dreams of playing pro football. And, I'm like, if this is your will, I need you to show me. And for the first time, I really cried out to God about my situation and really poured my heart out. I mean, with honesty and all that, which I truly believe the Lord is just really waiting for us to do. Some of us don't do it enough, and just be blatantly honest with God. And so I did that, and maybe a week later, and I'm gonna be, matter of fact, I'm gonna be completely transparent. I was weeping in prayer, and I meant every word. And so a week or two later, this is around Christmas Eve, I am pulling up to the mall, right? We go in the mall. At this point, I had one kid, my oldest. If you saw the last episode, she's huge now. But she was a tiny little baby, 11 months at the time, and she had wet herself. And so she wet herself in the mall. I told my wife, hey, I'll take her out. I'll change her, because we had, I had diapers in the truck. So forgot to bring them in. I took her out to the truck to change her. And so I'm taking her out. And as I'm walking out in the parking lot, I see a black Range Rover pulling up, and really, literally, I park way away from everybody else. That's just kind of how I am, right? So this truck pulls up right next to mine, and I'm like, who is that? I'm like, that can't be just your average person, right? So guy gets out, he's walking up towards me, and the closer I get, I'm like, wait a minute. That's Curtis Martin. Mind you, I haven't seen him since that time when I was in 4th or 5th grade. So he's walking up towards me. I'm like, the closer he gets, I'm like, that's him. I'm telling you. I'm holding my daughter at the moment. I'm walking towards him, and I just went for it. I'm like, Curtis Martin? I knew who he was. So I'm Curtis Martin? He's like, yeah, that's me. And I'm like, everything just came rushing back as far as like the memory of him giving me the autograph, the prayer that I prayed a week or two ago, just asking God to give me a sign, give me something, to let me know that this is real. And so I thought about all that in one moment, and I'm just like, all right, I cannot let this opportunity slip. So I'm talking to him, and I'm like, I don't know if you remember me, Curtis, but I'm like, you gave me your autograph. And he was like, oh, Faith Restoration Ministries? I was like, yeah. He said, oh yeah, I remembered your face. And I'm like thrown off, because I didn't think he would remember me at all. He remembered exactly where we met. And so I'm like trying to gather my thoughts, because I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't expect him to actually remember. And so fast forward, we had a great conversation. I found out at the time he had an 11-month-old daughter. I had an 11-month-old daughter, which was our only kid at the time. We had basically similar situations, and we had a great conversation, and he's like, yeah, I'm going Christmas shopping for the family. He's like, it's great catching up with you, seeing you again. He was like, man, like, I got to get back in here. So he walks away, I walk away. I'm like, I can't believe this just happened. And all I hear is like, hey, Kev. I turned around. I'm like, yeah. He said, hey, man, like, let's stay in touch, man. Like, let's, he gave me his information, which he doesn't do, and he let me know that. And so gave me his information. We exchanged information, and he's like, let's not lose touch. And so I'm like, wow. Like, so this time he went back in. I changed my daughter in the truck. I'm like, I can't believe this just happened. Like, so I'm like, yo, I gotta tell my wife right now, like, what just happened. Like, she is not going to believe this. Like, so I called her. I'm trying to call her and change my baby's diaper at the same time. I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened. I just ran into my favorite player. And she's just like, okay. Like, like I said before, I told you guys, she's not a big football sports, girl, right? Woman. So, I'm trying to explain what just happened. I'm like losing it in a good way, right? I'm telling my daughter, who's 11 months old, what just happened? Like, who you just met? Like, and just thanking God to even have that kind of experience with everything that happened. So fast forward a bit, I was still on the phone, and he comes back out, and he gets back. Obviously, he was parked next to me. So he gets in the truck, and he rolls down the window. He's like, hey, Kev. He's like, hey, man. He's like, what's going on with you? Like, what are you doing now? Like, and I told him about college. I told him how things went, how things played out. And not really, I was just looking for an opportunity. And so, just kind of explain briefly where I've been and what I've done up until that point. And so he was like, man, I want to help you. He's like, I believe in you. And so he talked a little bit more, we talked more about just what I'm doing, what I was doing at the moment, things like that, where I want to go, what I want to do. And so again, just more great conversation with him. And, he left, he ended up leaving. And at this time we left the mall. And so I'm pulling out, like, I can't believe this right now. Just in shock, man. Like, so I get a phone call from an unknown number. I'm like, who's calling me from an unknown number? And so I pick up the phone. I'm like, hello? I'm like, hello? And he's like, hey, Kev, it's Kurt. And I'm like, oh, what's up, Kurt? And he's like, yeah, man, are you guys still at the mall? And I'm like, we're leaving now, but I'm like, we're about to head home. And he's like, hey, well, I'm stopping up at Walgreens. He's like, maybe I can meet you there. Like, you guys, okay? Like, you need anything? And knowing me, I don't like handouts. I don't like asking for favors and things. So I'm like, I was about to say, nah, we're good, but really we were struggling. And my wife hits me. She's like, we need help. So I'm like, yeah, we could use some help. And so he's like, well, why don't you meet me at Walgreens? So I met him there. We go in the Walgreens, and everybody's just staring at us. And like we go in, he meets my wife. He's like, Kev's a great guy. Like, we're going to try to help him out if we can, just, talk to her, and just said some very, very kind things, man. And he gives me a big wad of money, and I'm like, wow, like, and it was just, if he wasn't my favorite player already, like, I don't know what more he could have been to me in that moment. And so we just appreciated everything he had done. And so it was funny that this is happening because I can think back my senior year of college, right? Last episode, when I would walk up to the stadium, and we played at the NFL Hall of Fame stadium. While we would walk in for practice, there would be banners on the side of the stadium hanging from the side. And there were only like a few of them. And it was the Hall of Fame finalists that year. Well, guess who was one of the finalists? Curtis Martin. So every time I would go to that stadium, whether it be practice or games, I would look up and I would see his face up there. And nobody knew what his picture up there meant to me, but it meant everything to me. It was encouraging for me when at a time where I was really going through it there. So to sum that all up, I call that the Curtis Martin story. Right. So you guys now know about the Curtis Martin story. I love that story. I had to share it. Right. Kind of moving on though, from that story, Curtis, did his best to help me get my first opportunity, and I ended up getting a tryout with the Cleveland Gladiators with Coach Time, and this was the Arena Football League, Arena 1, we called it at the time. And so that went great. Crushed the tryout. I really didn't know much about arena football. I didn't even know about Cleveland until I got the opportunity. So I went to the tryout, really. But learned more about professional arena football. It's funny because I never thought that I would play arena football. End up playing for a few years, right? And so I didn't know much about the arena game. It is a very different game than outdoor. But for somebody like myself who's a wide receiver, it could be one of the funnest things for a receiver ever. Minus the walls, right? If you know anything about arena football. So I get my opportunity with Cleveland. That was my first professional experience. Did well in a tryout, got invited to mini camp, did well, killed it. Just for me, I remember talking to the quarterback there, and he would tell me, like, you got to learn how to run routes like an arena receiver. So he's like, outdoor, your routes are amazing, but indoor, as far as the indoor arena football game, it's a different profession. It's a different way of running routes. And so I had to learn how to run routes like an arena receiver. And so, I was coming out of nowhere. I ended up getting released from them. And I remember Coach Ton told me, like, man, everybody knows you could ball. Like, you are a playmaker, and hands down, you could ball. He was like, but we got some other NFL guys that we're trying to bring in and sign. And so I was released for the first time. And on one hand, I was grateful to get an opportunity professionally. But on the other hand, it was hard. It was hard because you getting cut, telling somebody that you're not making it, right? Now, professional football in any league is different. As far as getting cut does not always equate to somebody not being good enough. Sometimes, you don't fit a scheme or a system. Sometimes you don't fit the type. All right. There's coaches that want a certain height or weight or speed or skill set. And so you may not always fit, though you're great at what you do. You may not be the greatest, or you might not be great at exactly what they're looking for in their system. So being released, I want to clear the air with that, because some people who, and I'll say people who may not know much about the game and the way things work, in professional sports. Again, being released, being cut, being traded does not always look like what it sounds. It's not a matter of, oh, he's trash, he can't play, so they cut him. No, there's things that happen in the locker room. There's things that happen behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about. All right. And again, we could go deep into that, but for time's sake, we're just going to do the best to stay on track. So, I had an agent at that time. I found a new agent, and this agent was the son of an NFL coach. All right. And so he had sent me to a tryout in Detroit. And so I go to this tryout, and I'm thinking it's Detroit Lions. And it wasn't. It was for the Rivals Professional Football League. And so I never heard of this league. I'm just, trusting my agents put me in the right position. And even with that, we could talk more about agents. That's a whole thing in itself. And we'll love to get somebody on to talk more about finding the right agent, things like that. All right, whole nother topic. But my agent sent me out to this tryout with the Rivals Professional Football League, a newer league, similar to the XFL. You know, it's more of a developmental league, but it's professional. You know, you get paid, you get checks, and so this league, I said, all right, let's do it. I was already training, just being prepared, and so I went out to the tryout, crushed the tryout. This thing, for the first time I seen a tryout that was like 80 athletes from all over the US, and a lot of those guys played in the NFL and are trying to get back in the NFL, and that's a lot of who I played with throughout my careers. Guys who maybe cut from NFL teams, cut from, played overseas, professional football overseas, played arena, professional indoor, and they're either trying to continue their career, or they're trying to get back to the league. And so the Rivals Professional Football League was a league like that. A lot of turnover, and guys just want to start their careers or keep their careers going, or try to get a shot to get back into the league, or CFL, which is Canadian Football League. For those who don't know, it's another professional football league in Canada, right? So there are many different professional football leagues. All right. Some people have their opinions about it, rightfully so. People tear them off, but at the end of the day, you're getting paid to do what you love, and you're doing it as a job, right? So regardless of how many zeros in the account, it's the same thing. You're playing in front of fans, big stadiums, and again, just your profession is football, so you're doing it all day long, right? Now, I went to the tryout. Again, there were so many athletes there, but I managed to make the top players in the tryout. So at this, I had topped every skilled player in the 40. 40 was the only one I didn't actually, but I ran a fast 40. I was a 4.4 up there. Another guy ran a 4.3 just below me. But I had topped everybody else in broad jump, shuttle, and vert. I mean, any L drill, all those tests, I topped everybody in testing. So I was the top skilled player in the entire tryout. And so because of that, they gave me an invite to the draft. And so I got the invite. I got drafted by the Florida Red Wolves. And so the head coach there was a former Cal U guy. And so I remember when he drafted me, he's like, "Hey, Vulcans for life," and I was like, "Okay, let's go." Like, so that was an exciting time for me and my family, and for people in my city, in Pittsburgh as well. I remember so much love, man. Just people just excited that, wow, like he's doing what he loves, and he's doing what he set out to do. I remember people kept saying that, like, man, you used to talk about this all the time. Like, you used to talk about doing this, and you're doing it. And so for me, having gone through all that I've gone through up until that point, having that draft experience that I didn't get to get in the NFL, I really appreciated how the Rivals Professional Football League does that, giving us that experience. And, for some of us, again, we got stories as to how we got to where we are. And ultimately, God plans that thing out, man. And that plan unfolds the way God intended it to. And so, regardless of how we got there, I played with NFL guys on those teams. It was a new league, so there's a lot of downsides to it. There's a lot of things that new leagues and new teams go through, which is something that I faced. On almost every team, most of them everybody had their thing, right? Everybody had their thing, but got to play for some really great organizations. Some maybe not so great, but having the opportunity to play professionally and sign that contract was a great feeling of accomplishment. And so played with the Red Wolves. Long story short, we ended up being the Southern Conference champions and the league champions of that year. And man, like, you talk about talent in Florida. And we were staying, my wife and my kids, my 2 kids at the time, we were living in Florida, in Hollywood, Florida, and beautiful down there. The girls loved it. It was great. Great experience there. Ended up going to the Triangle Torch year after that, after my time with the Red Wolves, and playing with guys like Sean Oakman and Laquan McGowan. Playing with guys from off NFL teams, and just some great talent. Guys who were supposed to be draft picks and things didn't play out that way. A lot of us, again, had that story. But playing with some top level talent, and really, I've experienced guys at that level are so much hungrier at that level than even some NFL guys, like, and that's just my experience, man. Like, but I've played with guys from all levels. So played in the American Arena League. There played in the National Arena League with the Columbus Lions. And it was during those years where I started getting NFL opportunities following that. And so through playing professional arena football exposed me and got me back in that window of getting NFL opportunities, having NFL workouts. I remember being so excited. At the same time, I talked to you about that window, that age window. I was at the end of it when I started really getting the NFL opportunities. Now, I knew that it was a long shot when I was later, in my career professionally. I knew that the chances of getting signed were very slim. But it was worth it. it was worth it. I did get those opportunities, right? I got those opportunities when people said that I wouldn't. I got those opportunities, you know, even after, and I'll share, this is another part of that adversity thing that we talk about, is people's opinions. People's opinions. I had a trainer who I sat down with, and this is early on when I was coming off the injury, trying to find a nice trainer. And, you know, he asked me what my goals were, and I'm like, you know, I want to play professional football, hopefully get a shot in the NFL if I can. And so he spent an hour telling me why I would not be able to make it. And I thought maybe he was going somewhere with it. This man totally dominated the conversation. It was supposed to just be a meeting about training, just getting a trainer. And that turned into this guy telling me every reason why I would not make a professional football team. He asked me where I went to school, you know, where I went to high school. You know, asked me where I went to college, things like that. And I really didn't tell him much. He just spent all that time just telling me every negative thing you could possibly think of. And something told me to just stay quiet and just hear him out. Not to accept what he had to say, but just to listen. And you learn a lot just listening to people. And at the end of this conversation, he said, well, I wanted to be a professional football player too. I wanted to play and get a chance at playing in the NFL, but I'm this short white guy from wherever he was from. And those are his words, right? My main point in saying that is people will project their doubts and their fears on you. And that is a part of pursuing your dream. It's a part of doing anything worthwhile, anything that is in your heart, whether it's a business, whether it's a podcast for yourself. Maybe you're a podcast and you just want to start it. Maybe you're a YouTuber. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe, you know, for whatever path you are taking, or that God has you going in that direction. Maybe it's a minister. Maybe it's a pastor. Maybe it's a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. There are going to be people out there who are going to project, right? And that's all this guy was doing. And that is not the first or the last time that somebody tried to tell me that it was not possible at all for me. So I wanted to share that too, man. Like, throughout this process, I've heard it all. I mean, you talk about negative things and people being opinionated. I mean, and this is a podcast where we could just be open, like, and honest. You know, I've experienced a lot of doubt and hate from people who share the same faith as me. And probably more in the church than I have outside of it. And it's unfortunate. But it happens. It happens. We're all flawed human beings who make mistakes, who project our fears onto each other. And that is just the world that we live in. But it does not mean that that is the end all be all and that's the final say so. For me, God was the final say so, right? And I felt in my heart that God was revealing to me to go for it, to not be afraid of them, right? People like that who get opinionated. And so what I did was I pushed through it. Did I train with that guy? Absolutely no. I did not need that kind of energy around me or somebody like that who was going to try to diminish or kill a dream inside of me, right? So that was my last time seeing that guy. All right. And I hope that if there's anybody out there who is trying to project those fears and doubts on you and something that you believe in, you need to separate yourself. And that's a part of overcoming adversity as well. So it's doing the hard things. So yeah, ended up getting great opportunity to work with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Los Angeles Rams, working out with them. Great experience. Appreciative for the opportunity. Now, I didn't make the active roster and sign with them, but again, for somebody in my situation where I was at the back end, because once you hit 20, 28, 29, 30, like there is an unspoken agreement. It's not like it's in writing. It's just a thing, right? There's a time clock and a window for you to get in professional sports. And once you hit the back end of your 20s, then that window, they say, closes. So I still got that opportunity when it was supposed to be closed. So for me, it was a miracle. It was a miracle. And it was, it was an experience I'll never forget. So following that, we went through COVID, right? And so before that, I signed with Louisville Extreme in the National Arena League. And so it was like during that time, COVID hit. We didn't have a season. I came back home, and I played with the Wildcats. Now, I had played a little bit of semi-pro before this, and this is what kind of helped me get the film to get my first opportunity with the Gladiators, with the Red Wolves and the RPFL. Was playing with Strabane Spartans. Great semi-pro team. Man, never thought I'd play that either, but playing with the guys that I played with was fun. They made it fun, and they made it worth it, and so yeah, I played there, semi-pro, ended up playing the Uniontown Rams, and for a little bit back then, trying to get the wheels turning before I signed my first contract with Cleveland. But once COVID hit, the season was canceled. And I came back and signed with the Wildcats. And so I played with them for a little bit. Again, for me, it was just, I love the game, playing the game. but also continuing to get recent film, which is important, and in professional sports. And so played there, ended up signing back with Louisville. COVID was like worse at that time. We thought it was getting better, and that didn't play out as well. Didn't have a season. A lot of people were going through it, obviously. Even the NFL, wondering if they would even have a season as well, but they kept it going. And so I finished my career with the Mississippi Raiders. And I'll tell you right now, like, that was the hardest and the best year I ever had at the same time. It was amazing. Jackson, Mississippi was amazing. They really showed love. And we ended up winning the entire league championship in the AIFA, and one of the funnest times I ever had throughout my career, which is tough to say when you start getting to professional teams. Like, you know, guys are coming in. These are grown men. These are guys with kids. You know what I mean? You're playing with guys who are you know, it's not high school anymore. These guys are just as big or bigger, just as fast or faster. You know what I mean? And you're playing with some big dudes who got money and checks on the line. And to do that and to still have fun and to enjoy your teammates, and, you know, when a lot of guys are there for business, is a rare thing. So, you know, I enjoyed my last year. My last year was my best year. Winning the championship, I felt like it was time to transition. Before that, I was in my 30s, you know, at this time. So, which I am right now. But I played as long as I could. I did have opportunities with the XFL that I could have taken advantage of. Being the XFL just came back out, and was excited about what that could have been, but I already made the decision to retire. And you know, for me, my dad had not seen any of my professional football games, and so he made it out to his first one at that league championship in Mississippi. And, you know, I remember seeing him in the stands, and I'm like, man, like, this is like a full circle moment for me. Like, this is like a picture book place to end, you know. And so like I said, I had already made the decision to leave. I think for me, it was the deciding factor. It wasn't age. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. I just think family-wise, it was a lot on my wife. It was a lot on my kids. And I just got to a point where, you know, it's like, I think it's time to hang them up. And this is like the perfect time to do it. You know, I wasn't banged up. You know, my body wasn't destroyed at this point. You know, I'm getting out. You know, I'm still in great shape and in good condition. I wanted to go out on my terms. And so, you know, it was more important to me to invest in my family. I invested so much into the game. I had invested so much into training and in recovery, and all your time goes into the process of just being the best you can be, week in, week out, year in, year out. The life of a journeyman is hard, because you could be in one league 1 week, you could be in another week, or another league the other. Being a camp body is tough, because you could ball out and he still get cut, and you just never know where you'll end up. It's a very limbo like journey, which is very hard if you have a family, and it's hard without a family. It's taxing, and there's a lot of I talked to another NFL guy, a good friend of mine. We had a recent conversation about just some of the stuff that comes with being a professional athlete, that just doesn't get talked about. And there's just a lot of things that you go through that honestly we could get into. And this is why I want to bring some other people in to give you a different perspective and a different story on some of these things, and go deeper than what we're going now. But we had a good conversation about the challenges mentally, spiritually, that you gotta go back and unlearn, and some of these, the mentality that you have to have, the things that help us bring out the best of athlete doesn't always translate to being the best person. There's just so many things that we can go deeper in. But it was really good, like talking to my guy about what professional football is like, and what these young players and young athletes don't know about what that's like. And I think that's what this podcast is great for, especially once we get into the next season, and really start getting some people in here to really speak on these things. It'll be good for them to be aware of some of the challenges that and adversity that we face, that don't hit mainstream media, that don't get talked about often, that get overlooked or maybe just ignored too. Things that we go through as athletes and as professional athletes. And so that led me to my transition out of football. For me, I knew for the most part what I wanted to do. I went to school, went to college for coaching. I knew I wanted to coach football. I remember one class, and I'll end with this one. There was one class that I had that the professor said, if you could do anything on this planet and you knew you would succeed and you took away the fear, what would you do? Like, what would it be? And so I remember writing down that I would start my own training business, and it would be more faith-based, right? So I would be able to express who I am, who I am is who I am in Christ. And I get to share that and train and help guys get what I didn't have. And so I always knew that I would get into what I'm getting into now. And that's been pretty much my life story, manifesting what I set out to do, and being determined to, and having the faith to get it. And all that really by the grace of God. I could not do it without God. I want to make that clear. Like, none of this I can do on my own, in and of myself. And so it has to be bigger than you. It has to be much bigger than you. Your dream, your goals, your vision has to be greater than just you alone. And it cannot be done by just you alone. And so, yeah, I knew what I wanted to do after football. Retirement was hard for me, because I've been so conditioned to train and be on a routine and a rhythm in and out of season, that when you just suddenly stop, it's very hard to transition. For some, they can't transition, and for whatever reason, it's really hard to pivot. But again, by the grace of God, I've been able to pivot, and I'm doing what I'm doing now, training young athletes and helping the next generation develop and grow as players, as men. Coaching football and really paying it forward to the next generation is what I get to do now. I'm also a podcaster now. And so, podcasting, doing a lot of entrepreneur things now, and being in business is what I want to do. And so that is really all I had for today. If you hung in there this long, wow. Like, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. Again, this is the last episode. I want to thank you for going on this journey with me from the youth to the pros. Man, guys, leave comments. Did you enjoy this season? Did you enjoy the podcast? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Keep it positive, but I want to hear from you. And I'll be looking forward to your responses, and just keep sharing this thing, and never give up, man. My parting words are the same parting words that I had in high school. In high school, I remember putting in my senior section, was that my parting words were to never give up. If you have a dream, never give up, man. And so, same thing today, man. If you have a dream, never give up, man. Those obstacles are meant to be victorious over. All right. They are working for you. They're not working against you. Right. And so keep going. Don't give up. Again, keep God first. All right. Pursue him. Pursue your relationship with Christ. If you're on the fence about whether you should give your life to God and begin a relationship with God, I would encourage you to go to a church or get with somebody who you know is a true believer. Hey, reach out to me if you want. But again, this is me. This was my story, and I appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. This is the last one, so look forward to more in the future, but my time is up, and we're way over time. And so this is Coach Kev signing off, and hopefully I'll see you guys again. All right. Peace.
He's got me so
came out the bottom, I count a whole lot of young gonna work millions of dollars. I asked out the charm, my little bitch a model, she made a few ends off her followers. You wanna on tour, a BP the child, live in a crew, I'm a title. Ain't no more worries, I'm up at it early, young niggas try to figure out the problem. For 30-30, I hit it like Curry, they hit me, I don't even holler. These niggas songs flop, niggas ain't gon' stop. Switch out my cars and my addy, my family straight and that's all that matter. Stacking them racks and then saving, put back for whatever, whenever it happens. I put my trust in my paper and I'm walking through straight, I don't see no one else. No, it ain't long this route. Simmons is better than steps. Stay ready, I'm already prepped. Undefeated, I feel like the champ. My bitch love the hunters, we fucking get money, she turning my tongue to a chump. You did it, I done it, you know how it coming, you don't wanna show them what the world. Go pick up a bag and that's across the country and light up that smoke in the air. Bitch is so trim, I treat her like my twin when I shop and I pop out a pair.